Well, Nigerians, particularly Lagosians, were shocked when a video that trended weeks back showed kids in school uniforms smoking shisha. One of the issues that came up is how children access these products and what government is doing to protect them from smoking in any form. It is believed these kids may have been lured into smoking shisha from films or music videos that they have watched. Some countries have put in place measures to ensure smoking scenes do not appear in movies and music videos. Unfortunately, in most African countries, smoking in movies and music videos is yet to be viewed as a huge threat to kids. A recent report by Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa shows that this practice seems to be gaining ground and requires concerted effort to checkmate. Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, CAPPA, is one of the organizations advancing strict measures to check the trend, and its Director of Programs, Phillip Jakpor, joins me now to discuss this. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Always a pleasure.
Right. Let's begin with that video because it generated a lot of concern across the board for a lot of people, not just parents, but seeing young people, engaging in such acts. And I wonder the impression it made for your organization, who is at the forefront of pushing, trying to ensure that these things do not happen.
Thank you. I think for me, it was very, very disturbing.
Right.
Very, very disturbing for two reasons. The fact that these kids, they were more like 13, 14, maybe 12.
Right.
And for years, we've said it, that the tobacco industry, eager to replace a dying generation of smokers, will continue to target the younger people, kids, who are impressionable.
Yeah.
So it was sad, but at the same time, there was also pity. Because we knew that if care is not taken, these kids would also be stigmatized.
Right.
Because the video was going around and there were different comments on social media. But it was a good thing ultimately that the Lagos state government intervened and was ready to rehabilitate the children. But for us, that is not good enough because there is an environment that allowed these things to happen.
You think the environment is encouraging that?
The environment is encouraging
How
it.
so?
Now there are two things. The report you mentioned is just what we did last year.
Right.
But sometime about 4 years ago, we also did a similar report, which showed that the tobacco industry ensures that what we call point of sale is close to the schools. In other words, while these kids are going to school or coming back from school, you have these kiosks where they can buy biscuits, candies, and just there you can also see packs of cigarettes. Like I said earlier on, kids are impressionable. So every day they want to buy biscuits, they want to buy sweets, and they see that beautiful pack. One day they want to try it. That is one phase. And at that point, we made the recommendation that point of sale, close to schools, the government should ensure that tobacco products are not there. But beyond that, there's even a law, the National Tobacco Control Act.
Yes.
Bans tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorships. Now, apart from those point of sales, these kids also watch these things in movies. They see people smoke and glamorize it.
Is there a provision for that in the law?
Yes, there is. The National Tobacco Control Act, Section 12, Subsection 1, prohibits tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorships. In other words, films are not supposed to depict and glamorize smoking. And then there's shisha, of course, which is what happened. And on social media, it's there. You see a lot of glamorization. Supposed role models are puffing these things and making it seem like this is an alternative lifestyle that is positive. Unfortunately, these are the things that the National Tobacco Control Act and the regulations prohibit. But it has found its way into our films. And it is the industry doing this to target these kids who see these things and think that is how life should be, that this is hype. And then we have the kind of scenario that you have with these kids.
Before we come to the aspect of the world becoming a global village in terms of access to internet and all of it, let's look at the level of engagement with stakeholders in the movie industry. The response, because I knew there was a campaign sometime that your organization engaged in. What was the response that you got, reaction with regards to this issue? Because not just Nollywood, we also have other woods within the country.
Woods, exactly.
Yes. So what was the reaction? What is the level of engagement with these people?
Well, like you mentioned, there are other woods.
Yes.
So, of course, we've engaged, and we're still engaged in Nollywood. There's also Kannywood, which is big in the north. There's the Kannywood Women Association of Nigeria. And, of course, you have the Theatre and Movie Practitioners Association of Nigeria. You have the Music and the Film Censors Board.
Yes.
These organizations, we have started discussion with them because we know that it is not what we can do alone.
Absolutely.
The response has been positive because this is a menace that will affect all of us. We have kids, we have brothers and sisters, the impressionable. We know we all have to team up to do this. It has happened in other climes. It's in the US, Paramount Pictures, Sony, they have put in place these measures to ensure that, even Bollywood in India, they have put in place these measures to ensure that the films that children watch do not have these scenes. And any scene that has smoking should be classified adult. So there are various measures that have been put in place. But
how effective have all of this classification been really ensuring? Because people have access to all of these things. You find them on social media, you find them on the internet. The world has become a global village. Some things that you say are classified adult, you see young people having access to them who are not even adults because they have phones. How are we also looking at that aspect? Because perhaps the industry might tilt in this direction, but they still have access to the internet.
And that is where this collaboration comes from, because once you have the industry in sync with this initiative, then, of course, you are going to have these measures put in place. I think Netflix did something recently in this regard. So you can see, I've mentioned Paramount Pictures, I've mentioned Sony, I've mentioned Bollywood doing it.
Yes.
You know, Netflix is big. We all want to watch films on Netflix. Netflix has also put in place a policy to ensure that, you know, these scenes are not, you know, glamorized. They are not there. We have a law, like I mentioned, which prohibits these, what we call them TAPs, tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorships.
Yes.
What we want is the enforcement of these laws. The delay in enforcing the laws has been exploited maximally by the industry, and unless we do that, we are going to have this kind of, you know, incidences where kids that the tobacco industry has been targeting and continues to target will take up these habits. Once we have films, for instance, that have this written and they have health warnings calling by that this is not good for your health and things like that, we are going to ultimately, you know, get somewhere. All
right. Now, one other key stakeholder that perhaps we are not paying attention to is the aspect of parents. Charity, they say, begins at home. What is their role in all of this? Because they have to inculcate some level of, I don't know what to call it now, but there has to be some development of attitude in the life of a child to determine, you know, see, this is good for you, this is what you should consume at this age, and this is what you shouldn't consume at this age. What is their role? Perhaps we are not engaging them yet, but then what, by way of educating now, because a lot of people are watching this program, what should be their role to also addressing this? We might put other measures, but parents play a major role.
Well, you are right. Parents play a role because the kids we are talking about are from different
homes. Yes.
Parents have that role to play, to be role models, the first role models for the children, of course. But if you do not have laws that even ensure that parents cannot do these kind of things, maybe in front of their children, you are still not going to make, you know, a real impact.
So awareness is key for that.
Awareness is key, and that we are doing, but we want the laws enforced. The minute these laws are enforced, it will go a long way to complement what parents are doing. I don't think lots of parents want to see their children smoke. Even those who smoke don't want their children to take up that habit. I've met someone who said he smokes and he believes it's a lost cause. He cannot stop it. But he wants laws to be put in place to ensure that his own children do not take up the habit. So you can see the laws serve to check us. You know, when kids have this message at home, they are going to school, they don't see cigarettes, it's not glamorized in films. Are
we also collaborating with schools? Because you mentioned schools now, and I'm thinking, yes, perhaps there's another aspect.
Yes. When the initial report was released, in fact, we worked with the Ministry of Education to ensure that this happens. And that study was conducted in 5 states. Here, even Lagos, your state, I think Nasarawa, Enugu, you know, Kaduna. So that, but we need the overarching law, which is National Tobacco Control Act 2015 and the National Tobacco Control Regulations 2019 to be enforced. The minute these laws are enforced, to a large extent, is going to stem this menace which the tobacco industry
Still talking, before we get into understanding the impact of all of this on the society, on children, because that's another aspect, perhaps people need to be enlightened on what the impact is. But then what is the level of engagement with the National Assembly to ensure the enforcement? I know there is another organization who has also been pushing that these laws be enforced.
Well, that discussion is still on. The law is there. The law is there. The National Tobacco Control Act is there.
Is there.
The National Tobacco Control Regulation is there. What we are now mounting pressure for is its enforcement. Of course, there are some hiccups left and right, that things that have to be, you know, in place or removed to ensure these laws are enforced. So that discussion is on, especially with the Ministry of Health, because the driver of this initiative is the Ministry of Health. So we are in touch with the Ministry of Health at the federal level. Did they say
what the challenges are to its enforcement?
Well, to a large extent, I think this must also be said. Tobacco control must necessarily be funded through our budget, the national budget. In the Act itself, there's a provision, the National Tobacco Control Act, which pushes for the setting up of a tobacco control fund, so that the agencies of government that want to enforce can always have a pool where they can, you know, get the funding to it. It's a national thing, so it's not just we are doing this awareness, but in arresting, when I say arresting, that is in going out to ensure that those who sell these products, that the companies that are behind this initiative are put to check. It will take a lot. You need the police, you need the NSCDC, you need the FCCPC, you have all these agencies of government. The FCCPC is doing a great job in the area of awareness creation. But we need all these organizations collaboratively working. So today, there's no funding for tobacco control. So
that's the
major challenge. So what we haven't saying to government is that from taxes, at least we should have taxes and other subventions, you know, areas where you can draw funding from to push these initiatives through, and not just make the law and leave it there. So that is a major challenge.
Perhaps those at the helm of affairs are listening, and we take the necessary steps. But then let's understand how serious this menace is and its impact, such that it needs to be addressed as quickly as possible.
The WHO says that about 8 million people die annually from tobacco-induced illnesses. That number is set to jump to 10 million by the year 2030. And most of that number is in this part of the world, the low and middle income countries, where we also fall into. The Western world, they have these regulations in place to ensure that, you know, it is checked and the industry is held accountable for the harms of their products. Unfortunately, most of those tobacco companies are coming to Africa. Nigeria is a huge market. Cigarettes are manufactured in Nigeria and exported to other parts of Africa. So it's a huge challenge, and that challenge necessitated what we call the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which is the first public health treaty globally. Nigeria is a signatory to that treaty. So we are bound to come back home and domesticate it, which has been done.
Yes.
But now we must progress to
by enforcement.
Very, very important.
So we have to leave the conversation here because obviously the major crux of the matter is the funding aspect, which government must begin to
Tobacco control funding.
Yes, which the government must look into addressing the situation. We must thank you so much, Phillip Jakpor, for your time on the program.